two more that need resharpening. Well, let's hope the lumber wizard can work his magic and prevent me from tearing apart more blades that magically seem to find every piece of metal in all my logs. Alrighty, how in heaven's name do we take this, get these batteries in here? There we go. All right. Nope. There we go. Okay. All right, so we have to calibrate it. Okay, I think I've got this thing calibrated. There we go. Well, we know it's good at detecting metal in the tractor. Let's run a little more specific test here to see how it does on wood. Okay, so don't laugh at this high-tech experiment. Put a piece of threaded rod and we're going to bury it under about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of wood and see if it'll pick it up. Well, that's not bad. Let's try a little thicker. This is about 2¼ inches. Ah, okay. Well, I know there's some debate about these metal detectors, particularly. Okay, we're near the truck. I know there's some debate about these things picking up metal inside of a log, you know. Pipe down. You know, if the bolt or the nail is really buried into the log. But typically, I'm never cutting anything thicker than 2 inches. You know, if I'm going to make a cant, I'm probably taking off, you know, a couple of inches all the way around the log. If I'm slabbing, if I'm doing live edge, 2 inches is probably the thickest I'll go. So we're going to bring it back to the sawmill, and I've got an old pine log which has a good chance of having some metal in it. It was located, when I took it down, it was located in the area near the corner of the property, and you know, probably had some fencing or nails in it at some point in time. So welcome back to the channel. John here from Catbird Hill. This has been quite a little challenge, as you recall from prior sawmill videos. I think I've blown through 3 blades. They're not destroyed, but they're too dull to be used. They have to be resharpened. I think 3 blades so far on metal that I have cut through in logs that I did not know was there. A couple of people suggested, you know, a device like this. I did some research online. The Wizard 5 was the one that was really highly rated. It was not cheap. I think this was $149, but it can be used in a lot of applications. So if I come across any reclaimed lumber that I'll use to build a project, I can certainly check for hidden nails and so forth. You know, the research, the online reviews were a little bit divergent when it comes to how deep this can detect metal. You know, we just did this little informal test here under maybe 2.25 inches of wood, and had no trouble picking up that threaded rod. So again, I think it'll probably be fine for what I need. If it saves me a few blades here and there, ultimately it's going to be worth the cost. So let's go back and check out this pine log, and we'll give it a good test. Welcome back to the sawmill. So one thing that was suggested is when you're scanning your lumber, try not to have it around too much metal. So I'm actually not going to scan this on the sawmill, because obviously the whole sawmill bed is metal. But we'll just run it over here. It's probably the fork, pallet fork. That's pretty good. I mean, I'm assuming the detection is straight down, and if it's detecting the pallet fork through this, and that the sensor is right underneath it here, so it's not detecting this part. Now it didn't. Oh, there it is. That's, you know, that's probably, let's see how much wood that is. 9 inches. That's a surprise. Yeah. I think I'm too close to this thing. Boy, metal everywhere. Well, it's definitely sensitive around the tractor with the forks. I mean, that's a lot of metal just in this area. But, you know, top, both sides, so far looks pretty clear. I think what I might do is when I roll it onto the bunks, I will, you know, I'll check this bottom side a little more thoroughly. Pretty good. I have no idea how this thing's going to turn out. I mean, you know, the outer layers here are kind of punky, but I've seen this 100 times before with pine and spruce and other maple, you know, it looks terrible on the outside, and maybe there is something good on the inside. Let's just see what happens here. All right, okay there. All right, well, Lumber Wizard says it's clear. We shall see. Next thing to do is we've got to open up the doors here, and before we start milling, because this is the time of year, I am learning from other more experienced sawyers, that critters like squirrels and chipmunks are starting to make nests and store food and all that stuff, and they are more than happy to do it in a nice protected environment, like inside of the bandsaw housing here. So we have to probably get in the habit of taking a look. Just made it. All right. Everything looks okay. Nobody hiding in there, which is a good thing. I think we're about ready for business here. One thing that a number of sawyers have shared with me is to get in the habit of doing exactly the same ritual every single time you saw. You know, if you uncover your saw, then you do step A, step B, step C. You do it every single time so you don't forget any of these steps. So I'm still learning. So what we're doing now is what's called leveling the pith. And essentially, without getting too technical, you know, each tree trunk has a point where it looks like it began to grow. So think about it, you know, the tree begins as a little sapling, there's that skinny stem. As it grows, it keeps putting more and more structure around it. You would think that that little stem would be in the very middle of every tree trunk, but oftentimes it's not. And as the tree gets subjected to things like wind or earth movement, sometimes that more wood gets developed on one side of that original stem than others. So the what's called the pith, that center point, can be off center when you end up with a mature tree. So what I'm doing now is I'm trying to get that point at each end of the log at the same height off of the surface of the sawmill. So what I've done here is I have a piece of wood that I'm putting between the rails, have a framer's square up here, and I'm measuring the distance from that reference point up to the center, okay? And right here on the outside of the square, using that, it's probably about, it looks like maybe 11 3/4 of an inch. And so then what we do is we come down to the other end and check this point. Now obviously this is the wider end here, okay? Ooh, we are on some slopey ground here, guys. All right. So we'll set up our reference point. Same thing we did at the other end. Put our square down. Yeah, I'm close. I'm probably a little closer to 12 here. So what I'm going to do is I need to bring up the other end of the log so that when I cut, I'm going to be on the exact same plane of cutting along the length of the log in reference to that pith point. I think I just made a word, pith point. So what I'm going to do is use this really cool, I better set that down, I see that falling. This really cool device, accessory that I got from Woodland Mills, and it's called a toe board, and basically it's like a little mini scissor lift. Metal, really sturdy metal platform that sits between the rails of the sawmill, and it's got a nice platform here. Very, very well built scissor mechanism, probably 3/8, 5/16 inch steel scissors, and just a real simple crank mechanism. And I'm just going to raise that up. Excuse me, we wanted to get a little bit closer to 12, and we are spot on. Okay, so that's really cool. I had seen these advertised at Woodland Mills, and I thought, well, maybe I really don't need that because I had a fairly inexpensive bottle jack from Harbor Freight. But when I tried to use that when I was doing this process with other logs, it was unstable. You know, the ground underneath here is not level. I didn't have a good strong base for it. This ended up being a really, really nice purchase. When I get the enclosure built, the timber frame structure, it's just going to live out here and I'll have it available whenever. So now we've got the pith at the same distance from the bunks here. These are our reference points, okay? Think of this as sort of a supplemental bunk. Everything now, when I cut, everything's going to be on the same level so that we can get this centered in the middle of the beam. That's going to give us the strongest beam structurally. So this is where we get to do a little bit of interesting figuring out before we fire up the sawmill. We just said we want that pith to be in the center. So I want to get the absolute maximum out of this log. This is the thinnest end, so this is, going to determine really what I can get. And if I look at the center of this log here, if I was to draw kind of a, I want to say imaginary line, because it's not going to be imaginary, I'm just going to do my best to estimate here what I could get. Probably somewhere here, and if I go from there to that center pith, that's actually about 2.5 inches. So then if I go 2.5 inches below that, it's going to put me right about there. And again, this is just really rough. I just kind of want to get some idea of what I might end up with. Doesn't look real level, but that's okay. Okay, so it looks like my finished product's probably going to be about 5 inches. Okay, so it's not, I don't think I'm going to have enough to do a 6x6. I would have to cut truly at a minimum 6 inches, and I just don't think I'm going to have enough meat at this end of the log, but that's okay. I've got plenty of use for a 4x4. So I think what I'm going to do is start here. I'll see what the quality of the wood looks like, and run the cut down there, see what that looks like, flip it over, have the flat side down, run this cut, and then we'll see. I'm not as worried about that end. I'm more worried about this end. This is thinner, and this is has just been a little bit punkier. So, but I've got such a great need for supplemental lumber for the sawmill shed build, the timber frame, that I'm happy to get anything I can out of this. So stay tuned. Let's see what we can get. Not bad. hopefully you can see that we're having some amazing weather here in southeastern Pennsylvania. I did this video over 2 days. I ran out of time yesterday, and I finished it today, this afternoon. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon here. Not a cloud in the sky, about 81, 82 degrees. Just amazing weather for this time of the year. Next week here, it's going to cool off dramatically. It's only going to be in the low 60s, so we're going to drop probably almost 20 degrees. Again, that's great weather. I love working in that weather. So the Wizard number 5, the Wizard 5 metal detector, you know, I think it did its job. I certainly cut through the bulk of this log to make this can. Didn't hit any metal, which I was really surprised, and certainly didn't detect any metal when we were testing it earlier. So I'm going to keep using that, and just even if it, you know, works 75% of the time, that's just a lot less time and expense I need to put out to keep the blade sharpened and put them back into service. Thanks so much for watching. We're creeping up on 800 subs, so please share these videos with friends and family who you think might enjoy the content. And stay tuned. We got a lot more sawmilling coming up. I've got some really amazing logs to show you, so stay tuned for the next one. Until next time, John here from Catbird Hill. Take care.